All right, so let's talk about the Pinto. We're going to move away from calculating things in terms of prison years, and we're going to start thinking in terms of dollars and cents. So in the Pinto example, this is the conventional prisoner's dilemma case that I've drawn up. Let's imagine the following. Assume that when everyone takes a stand, okay, right? So if you'll remember the situation, Lee Iacocca says, follow the brief. And we're imagining that there's just two engineers on the case in this example. And that if everyone takes a stand, if they both stand up and say, I will not complete this brief with this unsafe car, the brief will be modified. It'll be changed because these engineers are the best in the business and the project's already underway and they'll get their way. They'll get paid their regular salary. They won't receive the bonuses that they were to receive if they met the brief. Okay, so they each get paid their $100,000 salary. If both players follow the brief, right, they just do what they're told, they're paid base pay plus a $20,000 bonus. So they're paid, right, at a base rate plus a $20,000 bonus. And if only one player defies the brief, they're going to get fired. They're going to take home nothing. And the other one's going to get paid out their salary plus their bonus plus a raise because they've had to do a bunch of extra work. Okay, so how is this a prisoner's dilemma? It's a prisoner's dilemma in the following way, right? If they take a stand, they have to take a stand together. They cooperate with one another. However, in this game, each player, if they believe that the other player is going to cooperate, has an incentive to defect. They can actually increase their earnings by 50% by defecting. In the process, they'll get the other person fired. And so just like in the previous example, we can imagine that we can see that they're going to end up at the defect solution. So let's draw it out. If player one chooses to cooperate, right? So I'm going to take a stand. Is it in player two's interest to cooperate or defect? We can see right away it's in their interest to defect. And again, if player one chooses to defect, is it in player two's interest to cooperate or defect? Their interest to defect. 120,000 is a lot more than zero, better than getting fired. So, oop. And the same is true here. If player two chooses to cooperate, is it in player one's interest to cooperate or defect? The answer is defect. And if player two chooses to defect, is it in player one's interest to cooperate or defect? It's defect. And so here we are, back down in the bottom right-hand corner. And so the question is, how can they, right? Assuming they assign some value to doing right thing, how can they arrive at the ethical solution given the current incentive structure, right? How can they get there? Well, let's have a look. This is a scenario where we've imagined that unions have become involved. And the union, right, this is the punishment strategy, right? We're increasing the costs of defection, just like the mafia example, only the union is filling in that void in this case. And so the union imposes strict disclosure and safety requirements that members must follow. If they are asked to do something that is clearly unethical or dangerous or violates certain standards that are held that the union advocates, they have to turn them in. And we'll assume that completing the brief would violate those requirements. Let's say then that violation of the requirements leads to the loss of union membership, that is a loss of job, and blacklisting from future employment. Okay. We'll say that that's equivalent to essentially losing whatever salary they might have earned, right? And losing an additional $50,000. Okay, so here's the original solution, and here's the modified solution. So if player two, let's just play it out here. So if they both cooperate, they both get paid their salary. If player one cooperates, right, takes a stand, and player two chooses to defect, player one is not going to get their bonus, right? But player two is going to be disqualified from serving their position any longer, and is going to also be blacklisted from the profession. So they're not going to get their salary, and they're going to lose their 50 grand. And the same is true here. If player two cooperates, but player one defects, they're going to lose their job, and they're going to be blacklisted from the profession. If they both defect, they're both going to be blacklisted from the profession. Okay. So Let's hash it out. If player 1 chooses to cooperate, should player 2 choose to cooperate or defect? Answer is clear. If player 1 chooses to defect, should player 2 choose to cooperate or defect? Again, the answer is clear. Let's look at it the opposite way. If player 2 chooses to cooperate, should player 1 choose to cooperate or defect? Right? 100,000 is more than 50,000. And again, 50,000 is more than 100,000. Pardon me, 100,000 is more than negative 50,000. So we've solved the problem by increasing the costs of defection, the mafia solution. But in this case, we've figured out a way to ensure, now I'm not sure if it would be a legal way, I don't know the logistics of this, but it's an imagined scenario just intended to illustrate a point, a way to solve the problem of the Pinto case, right? And remember, a lot of you in your responses on that first day when we talked about the Pinto said, you know what, I'd probably do it anyway. And I have to think that in most cases, your motivation was the risk of losing your job or taking a career hit for not doing the wrong thing, right? Well, if you increase the cost of doing the wrong thing and everyone faces those same costs, then you don't have to worry about other people doing the wrong thing when you do the right thing. And as a result, everybody is essentially allowed to do the right thing, right? They don't have to worry and take that defensive posture that would protect them from losing everything. In this respect, it's like liberating people to do the right thing, if you think about it that way, because they can avoid having to take the defensive action that protects them against losing everything and maybe putting their family in jeopardy, right? So that was the punishment structure, a punishment-based solution. Now let's look at a solution that sort of resembles the way that some of these things are handled nowadays, whistleblower pay. Okay, so imagine there's a pool of money set aside and whistleblowers are paid a protection fee. And when they act as whistleblowers, they're paid out from a pool of $300,000. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that if they both do the right thing and blow the whistle on the scenario, they get to keep their jobs and they get $150,000 for being good whistleblowers, right? If they both do the right thing, we've seen they get to keep their jobs. But by publicizing it, they also get the whistleblower fee. If one of them turns, right, they still get the 150,000. It's the same as here, right? They keep their job, they get their bonus, and they get a little bit of extra pay for all the extra labor they've done. The person who loses their job, though, gets a payout of $300,000, right? They get the whole whistleblower protection fee. And the same thing is true here in reverse. And I don't know why that says 129,000. It should say 120,000. In any case, right? This is the same old solution. If they both choose to not follow the brief, they're going to get paid out their salary plus their bonus. So let's walk through the scenario one last time. If player 1 chooses to cooperate, is it in player 2's interest in the new game to cooperate or defect? Well, cooperation, that whistleblower fee. And the same thing goes here. If player 1 chooses to defect, is it in player 1's interest to cooperate or defect? Well, 300,000 is more than 120. And now we can look at it in reverse. If player 2 chooses to cooperate, is it in player 1's interest to cooperate or defect? 250 is more than 150. Oops, I'm doing that in red, aren't we? All right. 250 is more than 150. And if player 2 chooses to defect, is it in player 1's interest to cooperate or defect? Whether it's 129 or 120. Then, oops, that's the wrong example. Whatever. 300,000 is more than 120,000, right? And what do we know? We know that we end up here. So we've solved the problem by increasing the value of cooperation. We've solved the prisoner's dilemma. So the next time that you look at a case like the Wells Fargo case, where a bunch of bank tellers faced a series of difficult choices, where they could either say, I'm not going to do this, and stand up. And if they all stood up together, they could all collectively do the right thing and be at peace with their consciences and get to keep their jobs. But remember, in that case, all it takes is for one or a few, or the risk that you know that others will potentially be rewarded, right? They're going to get their bonuses, or they're going to get to keep their jobs, or they're going to become managers, right? If they meet their quotas and you don't. And so what ends up happening? Everybody is struggling to meet their quotas, and rather than trying to stand up and take a stand. And so the end result is you end up with people creating fake accounts out of desperation, right? Just trying to protect themselves based on the fact that they know that everybody else faces the same incentives. You can solve that problem in a very similar kind of way. Even better, don't put stupid quotas in place in the first place, and you won't have the problem to begin with. That's the prisoner's dilemma. I hope it's helpful. If you have any further questions, just get a hold of me, and I'll be happy to answer them in a meeting or an email. And look forward to seeing you soon.